Hello, my name is Aaron, and I will be presenting Titan, a work in progress name by Penguino Games. First, we should meet the team, where we have our three artists, Louise, Sean, and Hannah, our three programmers, Jacob, Joe, and myself, Aaron, and our three designers, Roy, Neil, and James. In our team, we have Sean, who is a great 3D modeler and will be our key animator, Hannah, who is our concept artist and our lead UI design, Louise, who is our environment artist. And the programmers, we have Jacob, who is great at prototyping and C++ conversion, myself, who will be working on AI and music, Joe, who will be working mostly in mechanics development and balancing. In the designers, we have James working on narrative and UI design alongside Hannah, Roy, who will be working on 3D modeling alongside Louise and Sean, and Neil, our producer and level designer. First of all, addressing the brief. From the brief, using the moment-to-moment gameplay limitations, we decided to take a unique approach to the overwhelming numbers genre and forcing the player to choose between mobility and attacking. More will be spoken about this later in the presentation. We are relying on a single-player focus and keeping an end-to-end experience of about 5 to 10 minutes, where the player will be required to survive waves until a self-destruct sequence is ready, keeping it well within that range of 5 to 10 minutes. The audience, we are looking into a mid-teen to older audience, sort of thriller with a light element of horror. The game is a first-person shooter survival game set in a research facility on a frozen planetoid Titan, where the player must take control of the last survivor of a containment breach. Using limited and repurposed weapons, the survivor must survive exponential waves of alien monsters and defend the main console until the self-destruct sequence is ready to be activated. Once it has been activated, the players must escape the facility at its most dangerous before time runs out. We can see this being a claustrophobic, overwhelming numbers game, utilizing the first-person shooter perspective. This will also be testing the player's skill at outmaneuvering threats and fighting back against exponential danger. They'll be using unusual weaponry, working with repurposed gravity manipulator and a sentry gun that the player can swap between, knockback on mobility, or locking into place and raining gunfire down on the threats. The player will also be scavenging for supplies, so during the waves the player must gather scrap to replenish defenses and upgrade their own weapons to gain an edge in surviving. This here is a rough mock-up made by our artist Sean to give a general idea of what the game will look like. The core gameplay mechanics. So the core gameplay mechanics we're looking into is the shockwave gun, where the player will be able to launch enemies away from themselves and launch themselves backwards. This will be working with 2 shots and a cooldown, so that the player might fire the gun straight down to propel themselves into the air and then fire in another direction, allowing them to move swiftly around the map. However, the cooldown will refrain the player from being able to abuse this mechanic. The heavy machine gun, a repurposed sentry gun, where this will be the player's main form of direct attack. The player slams this into the ground, locking the player in place when firing. If activated in the air, however, the player slams into the ground, creating another shockwave, knocking enemies back, giving them a little bit of breathing room if they want to start opening fire on enemies. Around this facility, there will be a series of defense turrets. They will be placed around the main console and other places around the map, and the player will be able to expend resources to activate these turrets for a limited time to give them more of an edge in the waves to come. The scrap itself will be the resource system, so this will be scattered around the facility or dropped by enemies and used to resupply, repair defenses, as well as upgrade the player's weapons. The core gameplay loop. Surviving the waves, the player will be thinking of 3 individual choices at any given time. Move, attack, and resupply. Move, when it comes to outmaneuvering enemies on foot or using the gravity gun to launch yourself around the map quickly and blast enemies away from you in the process. Failing that, they might see they have an advantage over the enemies where they've got a bit of distance from the enemies, or they funneled enemies into a corridor, in which case the player might be thinking attack, where they might slam down the heavy turret to unleash heavy firepower on the oncoming hordes. The third option that the player will be thinking at any given time is resupply, where if they feel that they have a bit of breathing room or a bit of space, or they see a surplus of scrap possibly lying around, the player's objective might switch to resupplying, in which case they will be looting the facility or dead enemies to regain these scrap supplies so that they may resupply defenses, make repairs, or even start upgrading their own equipment. The core deliverables of what we hope to achieve. The general scope is 1 interior level with 2 small enemy variants and a large enemy variant, which will be focusing specifically on the defense console at the center of the facility, which the player will be tasked with protecting. Gameplay mechanics we're looking at, as the previously discussed shockwave gun, the heavy machine gun, the turrets and defenses, and the resource scrap and upgrade system. Art and animation, we expect to deliver a 3D environment with a first-person animation and HUD, and characters and enemies models with full functioning animations. As for the audio, we're mostly going to be working with pre-made audio assets, aside from a small bit of music that will be composed by me. On top of this, we will also be making some marketing, promotional materials, and project development logs as we create the project. Technology. To make this game, we will be using Unreal Engine 5, Blender and Maya for modeling, Substance Painter for texturing on those models, Photoshop, and Fmod for all of the music and audio implementation. Additionally, we'll be using a mix of Jira and Discord for communication, timekeeping, and progress management within the team. The game itself will be playable fully with mouse and keyboard on a PC platform. I will now pass it over to Neil to take you through some of the existing media and concept work created for the team so far.
And I'm Neil Marshall. We continue the rest of the slides, but here we decided to take some inspiration from existing media such as Doom, Ultrakill, and Warhammer and Bolt Gun. We want to really go for the Deep Rock Galactic type style where it's very angular edged, very hard, very low poly in a way that makes it stand out in a very indie but fun and vibrant kind of way. When it comes to the concept art in general, we decided to try and get a bunch of mood boards to kind of sell the feel of small insect-like enemies that would naturally bring disgust to the player. And on the left here were some general concepts and what we were feeling how the smaller enemies can look. That way they really stand out and freak you out. And when it comes to the big enemies, we want them to really stand out. So we want to create a boss enemy that would stand in the center of the room just as a constant threat looming over the main character, really just standing there and make you really think about what's his purpose and why is it doing there. The overall weapons, we took multiple inspirations again from Bolt Gun, and we even thought about the Fifth Element, that multiple turrets from different series, and of course the gravity gun from Half-Life. Again, more tools are very aesthetic and very different and sci-fi, and something that really pulls you into this type of genre. When it comes to a lot of the environments, of course we want to sell the feeling of a frozen moon, so we look towards Dead Space and just overall tundras to get an idea of what it looked like for frozen areas that have no life form whatsoever. They're just a wreckage, and in these areas that are just really hostile to live in, we really thought about the overall feel that we wanted for the game, and the ice coldness within these places is definitely the way we wanted it to go. We even used more environment styles to figure out how we wanted the game to look on the inside, and we immediately thought of games like Half-Life, where there's a bunch of tools and assets that are around the area that really just kind of sit around to make you think that this place was very full of life and it used to have something going on before, but now it's just a wreck. And here's some basic assets that we created so far. This was created by Louise, our artist. She's already came up with some cafeteria type storage things, some type of office filing cabinets, which will go for one of the rooms, and even a little bin on the side there. So again, we've got an idea of how a lot of the props will look inside the places. We even here we have a opening cutscene that was created by Sean that we plan on using. After touching up a bit, this will be perfect to use in game. It's kind of like a starting cutscene for the game. It will leave us off with the stretch goals. Of course, we had the earlier points of what the game was and what we were going to have, but these are the things that we might have if we have spare time. For having additional level designs, maybe have multiple ways to go about it, maybe even some RNG factors involved. We want to get additional enemy types. When it comes to more the sentry based gameplay, we want to add more traps and maybe other defenses, and we do additional level objectives. That way it isn't just a one thing with a monitor and constantly having to go back and check it, make sure it's all fine and dandy. We also want further additions to the story, more lore writing. We're also thinking more specific upgrades for weapons to make them more varied and more replayable for each time a player wants to play through the game. And that is us for Penguino Games. I hope that you've enjoyed this concept, and if there's any questions that you want to ask, go ahead. we are ready and we will take on any advice that